definitely the favorite coming into that bout. As understandably so. He looked like someone who had all the tools to defeat Woodley. And he could definitely, and he was on a quite a bit of a surge at the point in time. However, he was unable to get the job done. Woodley actually performed a lot better than a lot of people thought. Dropping Thompson, cutting him badly in the first round. So I honestly, walking away from that fight, I was really impressed with what I saw. And now we have the rematch upon us. And so what's going on is now that, hold on one second, people.
Hello?
Hey, how you doing, Schwan?
Yeah.
Schwan, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can now. I'm resending the link to you and Steven just to make sure you have it. But you joined us right when we are just starting to talk about UFC 205. Excuse me, not 205, 209. But I started by looking at the main event, which is a rematch from UFC 205, where we have Stephen Thompson and Tyron Woodley fighting again over the welterweight title. And while this fight is, is for the 175-pound belt, 170-pound belt, it's definitely a big important fight for both men. But I think that there's a little more on the line for Tyron Woodley. I wrote about it this week, that this is an opportunity for him to keep the platform that he's created for himself. He's been saying some things that a lot of people have found very controversial in recent weeks. And I, for one, don't fully disagree with him. I understand where he's coming from, but a lot of people are very upset that he's talking about what he's talking about. So if he loses Saturday, I think that he loses that platform to have these conversations and to even drive the talk in any way, shape, and form. So I think that this is a big fight for him with a lot more than just a title on the line.
Yeah, I thought about this. I compare him to kind of like Floyd Mayweather or maybe Bernard Hopkins. Because in the case of Floyd Mayweather, he was never defeated. So he got to say and do a lot of things and have a lot of leverage. One fight he wouldn't have been able to do. And in the case of Bernard Hopkins, he was an unpopular fighter who wasn't pushed and wasn't the kind of guy that got behind, but he kept winning and he kept pulling off upsets. And every time he got his platform, he would call out either prejudice or how much of a business it was or how people weren't being true to the sport of the purity of the sport, which is what Tyron Woodley's doing. Like you said, it's good when you're winning and you say that. I mean, you should say that stuff anytime. But the fact is, when you're winning, you have a platform and you can make certain stances and refuse to answer certain questions and take a certain tone with the media. But once you lose that title or you start losing, that interesting story, the fact that you're not one of the best or not the very best. So it is a lot on the line for him. And I understand a large part of his argument. A lot of people think I don't. But it's a risky play to take. If you want to make that stand, you make the stand comes with it. Just like people who don't make a stand have to catch a certain amount of slings and arrows. The person who decides they're going to make that stand has to be prepared for that as well. And he's facing a very formidable opponent. And a loss really, I think, can set him back a little bit because I think he's rubbed a lot of people, not in the fans and the media, a little with the way he's been talking and how he's been acting.
Yeah, he's definitely drew a line in the sand, and he's paying for that, for lack of a better term, with the way people are responding to him. even just a few minutes ago, I was looking at a UFC Instagram post where he basically was saying that he's not going to talk about GSP versus Bisping at this point in time because he wants to focus on the fight that is in front of him. And while that's not an egregious comment, it's not, it's not something that's he's not spewing blasphemy about another fighter. The comments section would made you think that this guy just spit in spit in his opponent's face, just the way the people responded back to him. And I think that he's put himself in that position, not just with the last few months, but even if you go all the way back to when he began calling himself the chosen one, and when he began saying, that he's destined to be a champion, destined to be this, that, and the other. While it is good for him to have that confidence in himself, I think that it rubbed the wrong people. It rubbed people the wrong way from the very start. And now that he's being up and much more open and vocal about some of the treatments that he believes he's experienced in the sport, it's just completely turned people off.
Well, I like to look at it from another point of view. I think there are a lot of fans who are prejudiced racists. I think that goes, and I think to a certain degree it can go to any race. But the thing about it is, even though he's catching a lot of flack, and a lot of people are turning against him, at the end, he's still kind of getting a little bit of what he wants, because the biggest thing he wanted to do, he wanted to take the biggest fights. He wanted to get the biggest money. He wanted the biggest opportunity. Now he knows he's not going to get the biggest fights because he knows he's not enough of a draw. Tyrone Woodley's not a stupid guy. He knows he's not a draw. He knows he's not the kind of guy who puts people in seats. That's why he's looking for a money fight. But if you can't get a money fight, what's the next best thing you can do? You can turn whatever fight you're involved in into a big event. You can turn it into a money fight, and I'm sure he's speaking from the heart when he talks about prejudice and racism and things of that nature. Conor McGregor predicts knockouts and says he's going to take someone's head off, and Tito says he's going to bury someone. In a certain instance, these conversations are having the same impact. He's talking trash and he's drawing attention, but he's doing it in another way, and it's going to have an effect of, for some, it's going to make him a hero, because there's certain people in the segment, whether it's white, black, Hispanic, who are going to say he's calling it straight, he's being honest, he's right. There's a certain segment of people, white, black, Hispanic, whatever else, who are going to feel like he's being a baby, he's entitled, and he's the one who doesn't want to do his job as the welterweight champion. But either way, whether they like you or they love you, what happens to those people? Those people watch you. They watch you perform. They watch you see you win, and most likely he's got a lot of people who are watching to see him lose. But if it turned into a big event, if it gets more buys, that impacts him. He's the champion. That helps his bottom line. If he can stir up some controversy, that helps his bottom line. If he can come out for speaking on the behalf of minorities who he feels aren't treated correctly in the UFC, that also helps expand his brand, because no longer is he just a fighter. He's a guy speaking out on maybe a social injustice. He's a fighter who stands for more than just fighting. And once again, I'm not saying this isn't genuine, but there's a risk in him doing this. There's a huge benefit in him doing this as well, moving forward. If you understand what I'm saying, it makes him more than a fighter, because he's calling out things that are reflected in our everyday life, our everyday happenings. Somebody of a different race, or someone who's different, or someone who doesn't play to the crowd or doesn't fit in a certain box, gets pushed aside or gets put behind other people because they play the game.
And what's unfortunate about that is that, you're definitely right. It puts him in a position to have more of a promotional value to the UFC as a whole. Unfortunately, it's almost as if it vilifies him at the same time. It's not, that he's becoming more of a fan favorite because people are saying, oh, he's making clear points. I see his side of the story. He's right. Let's stand behind him and let's support him in being a positive representation of minorities in sports. Is not that. It's he's becoming popular because people are now going to be booing against him and hoping to see him lose, simply because he is pointing out these racial injustices that he feels that he's gone through. And
it seems that way. It might seem that. I think you're right, but the biggest thing about it is I agree with some of the points he makes, but I'm not a person who's going to go and scream from the mountaintops and get all over Twitter and write all these emails about how unfair it is. That's just not my tone. So I think he's got a segment of people building up who support him. Of course, like you said, there's just a larger segment of people who are against him. But even if those people are against him, that somehow defines his character and defines his stance even more to some people, if you understand what I'm saying. Like there's
And
more people
see,
say like, look, he really is right. Look at these comments. He really is right. He knows what he's talking about. And in a certain backhanded kind of way, that kind of helps him because if everybody just agreed with his point and backed him up on it, point because they'd be like, well, look, everybody's on your side. But when people make those comments and come at him like that, that's when people have that aha moment. And whether they're on the side or not, it helps him self outside of a fighter. And I'm not saying
and you
it
know
won't
what?
get ugly.
I can get with you on that because even myself, I before the Stephen Thompson fight, I kind of became more of a fan of Woodley's because I wanted to see him fight and win and see what he would say next. Because seeing how people were immediately throwing their support behind Stephen Thompson, I think I kind of did feel some type of way about it. It almost seemed like people were when Woodley began saying, he wanted a bigger name fight. People were kind of shocked and like aghast that this guy is asking for a bigger name fight. Hell, this is his second title defense. Come Saturday, he's still defended his belt more than Conor McGregor has defended either of his belts or either one of the titles that he's won. So like, there's still that fact that's sitting out there. So I get the difference between the two. I'm not saying he's as huge of a draw, but there still are facts behind the situation where I don't blame Woodley for his for what he's done. But yeah, you're definitely right. I can honestly point to this situation and the way the lead up to UFC 205 went as probably the catalyst to what caused me to be a bigger fan of his.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, I don't feel sorry for Thompson, but he seems like a genuinely like just a nice guy who wants to compete and fight. Like he just seems like he just wants to fight. He wants a shot. He thinks he earned another one. He wants it, and it's like he's got to answer these questions that I don't think he really wants to be engaged in answering. Not because he's against it or not because he's for Tyron getting shortchanged, but he's a martial artist. He seems like a very nice person, and he's a human being, and he just wants to compete and find his dreams. Now he's in the middle of this sort of push and pull where if he speaks out, he kind of gets put into that category of, well, look, he's in on it too. He's one.
And what's really interesting about that, what you just said, is like if you look back to their original interview, the one that was on ESPN, when Woodley started saying what he was saying and voicing his opinion, the look on Stephen Thompson's face was a look of what I believe to be genuine confusion, because he doesn't understand where Woodley was coming from. And in the interviews to follow, he said that he doesn't see it, he doesn't get it. And being a straight white male, you probably won't get it when a minority is telling you about the injustices that they face, because you don't see that. And I think that was a prime opportunity in which everyone witnessed a straight white male listening, and I think being earnestly open to listening to what the minority was saying to him and not having the ability to comprehend what was being said just because of the fact that he doesn't go through it on a daily basis. I'm not saying that to denigrate Stephen Thompson in any way. I'm just saying it because that's kind of part of the fact that you see when you have these types of conversations.
Well, you're right in that, and it's like, but I always tell people, because I've gone to an all-white school, I went to all-black school, I've been around a lot of different races, most people have. There's always going to be some instance of an experience that somebody's gone through that you have no idea. If some girl talks to me about certain things she's been through, I have no idea. There's black people I talk to who have no idea what I've gone through. They tell me, well, this is what I went through, and I felt they were being hard on me, and I'm like, do you know the situation I came up with? What you're talking about really isn't anything to me. So the weird thing is, he really can't say anything because, I really think he doesn't understand. I don't think he gets it because he's not that kind of person. Maybe he's not around those kind of people, or maybe he's just never been exposed to it. But it's kind of like, I'll put it like this. Like if I was applying for, I'll put myself in it. If I'm applying for this job and then I'm against this woman and we're competing for this job, and then she brings up the fact that they might be sexist and that's why they're not getting the job, I'm going to feel confused because I might not know where she's going from. And to a certain level, I might feel a little offended or insulted because it's somehow insinuating that I'm not getting the job because that I'm getting the job because I'm a guy and not because I deserve it. And I think Thompson feels a little bit of that, like, oh, he's he's the typical white guy. They're getting behind him. And he's like, look at my record. Look at what I've done. I'm not getting this match because someone gave me a favor. Look at the fight. It was a close fight. It was a draw. Mm-hmm. But now the situations come up, and it's a really tough one to be in, especially if that's not your forte. And no offense, we both know this. If you're a white person, you don't have too much to say in these situations. You really can't say much.
Yeah, you
You
should
really
definitely
can't.
be in the listening position. That's kind of a conversation for another day, because oftentimes it is difficult to listen to a situation where you listen to a conversation where you're the minority, or excuse me, where you're the majority, being told about the injustices that you may inadvertently, unknowingly place against the minority. Like I think back to when my ex-girlfriend and I would have conversations, and she would let me know her stance on feminism in different situations within that, and listening to the conversations, like, man, I didn't know that I could be doing X, Y, and Z, making her feel like X, Y, and Z, without, just because I'm a man and just because I behave the way I do. So it is an interesting conversation.
It's the weirdest thing. I remember I actually saw this on Twitter. I can't remember the exact quote, but a person was saying that, and understood this. It's like anybody who gets questioned about the validity of how they feel or what they've gone through, or somebody makes it seem like you have it easier or you didn't have it tough too, it makes another person defensive. If you come from a nice neighborhood and you have other people who came from bad neighborhoods saying you had it all easy, blah blah blah. The first thing you want to do is tell them what challenges you went through to
Hmm.
establish I had it tough too. I had to work through some stuff too. And the issue that gets caught up when it becomes a race or gender issue is that people take it as you're saying that I didn't go through anything. And what people are actually saying, black people aren't saying to white people you didn't go through anything. They're saying you didn't go through as much as I do. I'm sure you went through stuff because every human being does stuff that I go through because of skin color. And the same thing with gender. You might have gone through some prejudice and some abuse, but as a woman, more because of how women are viewed or physical advantages men have over women. It doesn't mean you didn't go through anything, because that's the first defense everybody has. Well, I've been through stuff too. I understand that. I'm gone through. You're not going through what I'm going through. And that's the hard part to separate, because it's like someone's challenging your validity, challenging your credibility, or challenging your experiences, and nobody likes that. I'm a very calm person. I handle it. I don't get as bothered, but as a human being, you would get bothered. Like I said, in that situation, somebody says, "Oh, well, you got this job because you're black." You would be offended. You'd be like, "I got this job because I'm good enough for it."
Yeah, definitely,
That would,
definitely.
that
So
would be
it's interesting, man. We've been sitting here talking for 20 minutes already about this, and we haven't even touched upon the fight itself. So let's go ahead and let's swing the conversation back to the thing that's actually brought us together. Looking at this main event here, what do you think is going to happen, man? Again, Woodley's the underdog for the eighth time in 8 straight fights. Do you think that this is the fight that plays out more like everyone assumed the first fight would play out, with Thompson being elusive and able to hit Woodley and finish him? Or is Woodley going to be able to get the job done this time after having Stephen Thompson really hurt in the fourth round and in the first of their UFC 205 fight?
I'd say the thing about Woodley, a lot of people keep saying it's weird that he keeps getting, but I'm like, if you look at the skills he's shown, not the physical ability, not the knockouts, not the toughness, but if you look at the actual skills he's shown in the cage, you would be almost right to think he's going to be the underdog, because he's shown a very limited skill set in what he's done. It's essentially he sits and waits. He throws a low output of shots. He uses an occasional takedown. He uses feints, and he uses essentially big counters to score wins. That's what he does. And most of his wins, it's been landing the big right hand, following up. It's been feinting guys and controlling them with the threat of his athleticism and his power. He hasn't been showing like a lot of dynamic, diverse striking. He hasn't shown really super clean defense and counters. He hasn't shown any of that. He's got like a really set game plan, and he applies that very intelligently and very patiently. But he hasn't shown anything where people are just like, "Oh my God, like how do you beat this guy?" He hasn't really shown that width, that width and depth and skills he's applied. So I get why people consider him the underdog all the time, because you haven't seen very much that says otherwise. He's a wrestler who's got great power and great timing, and he hasn't shown great kicking. He hasn't shown great submissions. He hasn't shown over the period of 3 to 5 rounds. He's never shown that. So I get why people think he's going to be the underdog.
I think he has shown great kicking. I mean, remember, it was leg kicks that softened up Carlos Condit and caused that TKO loss.
I've seen it in spots, but it's like, when you see it's
I
like
think
you
he
see,
does get away with it. He does get away from it, though. Excuse me.
yeah, that's the thing. You see flashes of it, just like the takedown in the first fight. He scored that takedown. And he said, "Well, the reason I didn't go for another takedown is because I just got caught up in the moment. I wanted to finish with his hands." That may be true. I don't believe that. I believe he didn't go for another takedown because he's very explosive and it takes a lot of energy. And if he burns a lot of energy down or having to get his head back up from the takedown. And even if he gets it, there's a lot of energy holding someone down. I personally think he can't wrestle someone hard or a whole round, much three. So the reason he doesn't go for takedowns a lot is because of the energy it takes. I don't think it's because he doesn't want to, because he showed a clear advantage in that fight with the takedown. The takedown is what changed the fight. Once he had that takedown and get the ground and pound, Thompson didn't want to open up anymore. He didn't want to take any chances for fear of getting taken back down and punished for it.
That's very true. I can agree with you on that there.
And you can manhandle him. Why not do that again? I mean, if you know you can take someone down and submit him, and you take him down the first time and you're dominating him, why do you go and exchange hands with him? If exchanging hands is 50-50, why not go to the area where you have a 80-20 advantage? Why would you ignore that?
So, how do you see this second fight playing out?
I really think I really think that Woodley kind of fought the perfect fight the first time. I really think he did more. He showed more than I expected. I mean, I still felt like he got tired. I still felt like he didn't go to the wrestling as much as he could have, but he actually flashed it and used it and did huge amounts of damage to it. So I essentially don't know what else Woodley could do more to win the fight, to be honest. I think if he starts using the kicks and starts trying to be fancy on the ground with the submission, I don't think he can finish his submissions. I don't think his kicking game is going to do anything except get him countered or picked apart. So essentially, I expect to see Woodley to do more of what he did the first time, just not make the strategical mistakes of going for a submission when he could have just finished it out with strikes, or maybe using the wrestling more. I don't really know that he's going to do anything different, because in tough fights, he goes back to his bread and butter, which is those big counters and those explosive moments of offense. He's not a consistently busy guy. So I see him doing the same thing he did before. Thompson's a guy who I think has more room to adjust. I think Thompson's going to have confidence from taking that beating. He knows he can take that punishment now. So now he feels like, I can take his best shot. I've already taken it. So now I'm going to open up and show him everything, show him all the tools. If I'm going to lose getting stretched. I'm not going to let him control the fight with these big moments of offense. I'm going to start putting it on him. I'm going to start creating opportunities to counter him, and I'm going to overwhelm him with all him.
So then you basically just answered my second question there. Like, how do you see Thompson kind of growing from the first fight to the second fight?
Should I alert to you guys that I'm here right now?
Yes, you should. Thank you. I appreciate that, Steve. We got so ingrained into the conversation that we actually didn't even see you join in there. How you doing?
No worries. What are you doing sneaking up on black folk? Don't you know better than that?
I was trying to be good, but I was like, man, just go church behavior as opposed to modern school behavior.
My apologies, man. My apologies. Definitely thank you for joining. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, Stephen Wright is going to be joining us tonight to have a strong conversation about MMA, man. We're going to be talking about a couple of different topics there. I want to thank Schwan again for using his connections to get you in on the show. So I appreciate you taking some time to talk to us.
No problem. Twitter connects us all, I guess.
It really does. It really does. If you could do me a favor, flip off your camera so we can make sure that we stay on the highest bandwidth. I don't want you to get cut out at all.
No problem. Let me figure out how to do that, because this thing is new to me.
It should be an icon. If you go up to right above the circle where it shows you someone is talking, the camera is right in the middle. Just click on it and it should turn red.
All right.
You did it. There you go. Good. All right. So Schwan, as usual, man, I'm going to let you drive the conversation here, man, because I definitely love hearing you and our guests go back and forth and ping pong off of each other. So let's see what you got, man. Go ahead and start from wherever you would like to pick.
Okay. First of all, I wanted to thank you again, Stephen, for coming on the show. Just a little side note. I was always on Twitter breaking down fights and stuff, and Stephen was one of the first people who actually contacted me and was like, hey, you got a good eye. You think like a coach. You should really want to do a show. You want to do vlogs. You want to work with fighters. You really should make an effort to do that. And I just wanted to be one of the people who encourage you to do that, because somebody encouraged me. So I wanted to be a guy who encouraged you. So he's one of the main reasons I'm doing a show like this, or I do some of the stuff that I do outside of the show, like working with fighters and breaking down fights and things of that nature. So I want to thank you, first of all, Steven, very much for that.
No problem. That makes me feel good.
Yeah, my kids are pretty excited. They were like, "Wait, he coaches in the UFC and he thinks you're smart?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not an idiot." But Steven, I wanted to actually we were talking about the Thompson Woodley rematch, and thing is, when you were coaching Johnny when he got the welterweight championship, you had to have a rematch with Lawler. So I wanted to have you take us through what the coach is doing in rematches with this when it's a fairly quick turnaround for a fight, and you got to fight a guy who you had a very with. How do you scan that? How do you set that up? How do you reignite the fire in your fighter to prepare for that?
Well, I guess the main rules for me is you want to build on what you had success with in the first fight, and then you want to try to take away the moments of success that you gave up in the first fight. So I would say the biggest rule of thumb as far as what you could do wrong is if you spend your camp trying to predict someone's adjustments, you're going to get yourself in trouble. You should never worry about that part, in particular if the identity of the fighter is what got them the offense. So, for example, George St. Pierre, when he loses to Matt Serra, his identity is still a jab and double leg guy. So when he came out in fight number 2, he didn't go out there thinking, all right, well, if I do this, this, and this, I'll be able to get here and so on, whatever. He went out there and said, you know what? I didn't go to game plan number 1 fast enough. I didn't get myself into my double leg fast enough. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then I'll make Sarah figure out how to get up. But I'm going to get into my offense quicker, but I'm not going to change who my identity is. So as these two guys go into it, they're probably thinking, what I am, where did we have success? How do we build on that success? And how do we take away what we gave up before? So if I'm in, Woodley's camp, as soon as I got him on his back, he stayed on his back. I scored big, strong ground and pound. He didn't rock my base with butterfly hooks. He didn't come up on a single. He didn't, trap my head and then kick away once I gave separation. He didn't do anything to get himself up to his feet. He kind of played a guard game, and then I was able to score big offense, posture up, and score even bigger. And then also I know if I'm patient enough, I'm going to find my shot. If we keep walking each other down, if we're both throwing our punches the hardest, I'm going to win as far as that power thing goes. So I think that's going to build the confidence there. And, of course, if you're Wonder Boy, it's simple. First of all, no low kicks. You're probably not going to throw one low kick all fight. If you throw a kick, it's going to be at the head, or, you're going to do it like more teep style, a jumping kick style, something high. It's not going to be anything that you think can get caught because you don't want to give up something that can be earned. So make sure you continue to play the boxing, because what people don't realize is, for me, the thing that makes Wonder Boy good isn't the karate style. Like, it isn't the spinning kicks and that kind of stuff. It's his boxing. His boxing and his length make him so difficult. He can exchange in between really, really well. He's got a good eye for it. And then because of that point style of karate that he played, he knows how to touch and get out. But the spinning kicks and that kind of stuff, I think Woodley will be ready for that because he was ready for it in the last fight. Like, he handled that well. So I guess those are the two things that I would say looking at both parties going into this fight, because that's pretty much what I did. Johnny had success with combinations and low kicks in the first fight. In the rematch, we did the same. The only thing was the weight cut, affected us in the later rounds in round 5. And then Robbie had, what I call the sexy shots. He was able to score, like he scored a teep to Johnny's face in like the second round, I want to say. And then he had that moment in the first 30 seconds where he just came out and threw a bunch of knees. So people remembered those moments, but we still won the steady kickboxing I felt in both fights. It's just that we weren't able to get the cards in the second one. So I guess that's what these two gentlemen are thinking right now. How do we put rounds away? How do I get into those moments that I have a success a lot earlier? And then how do I not give up what I gave up before?
Yeah, the weird thing about it is every time I see fighters, it's like my question becomes, how do you stroke that balance between being confident and not being too overconfident? Because often guys will be like, I had this moment in the fight and I knew I almost had him. I think that's good to build that confidence in a fighter. They have to feel that way. The fact of the matter is they didn't finish in that moment, so you have to be aware that your opponent has something more to offer. A lot of times when I hear fighters talking, it's in these absolutes, and I'm like, are you giving your opponent enough respect for what they did to shut what you did down? Like, Tyron Woodley can say I had these huge moments, But usually when he has those huge moments, guys go away. When he hits them like that, they go away. Wonder Boy didn't go away, and unlike a lot of guys who get hit like that, Wonder Boy was able to come right back out, push him across the cage, because Woodley, he's really good on those entries with those feints, but on those exits, you're good. He backs straight up, and if you put volume on him, you can really take advantage of that. So as a coach, how do you rein that in? How do you tell them that balance so they don't get too overconfident in what they did?
By the time they're at the championship level, you know what you've got. So if you're dealing with somebody first few fights in UFC, then you probably got to do some reining in. Sometimes where you got to say, all right, hold on, slow down, that kind of deal here and so on, whatever. But people who get there, I wouldn't tell Conor McGregor to stop talking. You know what I'm saying? Like it's who what got him to the dance, and he only knows being that kind of confident in himself. So when I have guys get overconfident and talk, I pretty much got to let interview talk be what it is, because you should understand that when these guys, when they do, like the guys who are going to be in the press conference tomorrow, between the podcast, between radio show interviews, TV interviews, local and international, and the MMA media, they're getting asked the same question a lot. And sometimes the answer that people gravitate towards is just the one that's the fullest. And sometimes that has a little bit more confidence than not in it. But most of these times it comes down to who executes on fight day, no matter what you say. So for me, if it makes someone do something out of their character, then you have to worry a little bit. But sometimes the moment does it. An example I always bring up to people, I think that Eddie Alvarez had 1 minute of success doing what I believe their game plan was. If you rewatch his fight with Conor McGregor, watch the last minute of the first round. He plays a lot of just single kick moments, like a lot of, single kick, hook kick, simple. And he didn't give Conor anything. Like, he didn't give Conor any moments to play the counter, that kind of deal, whatever, for that 1 minute. So I said on Twitter, I was like, he found something in the last minute. That was his game plan. But I'm telling you, when the lights are on and the crowd's loud and you just got the title because you landed that one big shot, it's hard to stay composed. And I think that that's the toughest part. And sometimes it has nothing to do with coaching staff. It's just the moment. And I think in that moment, because he was like, man, it's too slow working the way that I was working before. If I just catch him with one of these, he's going to be in bad shape. And the next thing you know, he's missing with right hands. He's overextending, and Conor will eat you up. So I think I'd be more worried if the round one language suggested different than what we prepared for in our game plan. But as far as before the fight, I pretty much got to let that talk come and go, because you never know. You never know what you got. You don't know, and sometimes athletes, they need that kind of confidence. They need that. You need to think you're invincible in this game, even if you're not.
Yeah, I can understand that. As I've actually, like I said, I often say, I've worked with some guys before, and it's like, I found it odd that some points they're contacting you just for like reassurance. Not that they don't have confidence, but they want to hear that extra, you can finish this guy, you got this over this guy, you can do this to this guy. Not that they're ignoring the whole plan altogether, but they're looking for that reassurance in that area of strength they have, or even in that area of the weakness. Like, yeah, he got you. He might be able to get you here, but I believe you can get out of this spot. I believe you can turn it around at this point of the fight. So I know it's a lot of mental stuff. My biggest question would be, once again as a trainer, how much, like, a lot of trainers don't like to have rematches. They like to have the fight, go, and move on to the next thing. Is it more stressful for the trainer because now that person's got a second look at you, and when you have certain attributes like a unique style or a high level amount of athleticism, the first go round people aren't really acclimated to it. The second time they have an idea of what you have, like kind of like Miesha Tate and Ronda Rousey when they fought. The first time Miesha had no idea what Ronda could do, how strong she was, how explosive. The second fight she did much better because she knew what Ronda had to offer. That explosiveness, that strength, that power, it wasn't as big a shock to her. She had some answers for it. I believe if they would have fought a third time, she would have solved that riddle. But when you have a rematch so soon, you don't have a lot of time to put in new things or to even address the weaknesses you had before. So as a coach, is that extra stressful for you? No, you don't have that coming in anymore?
Well, it's different because I did think that, Miesha said after that second fight that she was surprised that Ronda was able to score right hands, because Ronda got better in that time period. a long way to go, but she offered some movement. She offered some boxing that she didn't offer in the first fight. And I think Misha just realized, if I throw a lot of punches, she's not used to a lot of punches coming at her. This ain't mitts. I'm just going to keep coming at her. I think Misha was able to score when she kind of threw the flurries, but I didn't think she had anything on those punches other than just the aggression of moving forward. But it kept getting her into body lock positions, and she kept, ended up on her back and working off her back. I think I would have been curious to see the third fight just because I really wanted to know what it was like, or what it would have looked like if she were able to get into range, box, and then move a little bit. But, it's in the past now. But the difference in athletes, and then the fact that you've done it before, you expect to do it again, comes into play. So, once Misha would find herself in those bad spots in the ground, how did she respond there? Because Misha's never been, great about getting off of her back. She usually plays on her back when she goes down there. So it does come into play. As far as rematches go, I come from kickboxing. Like, that's my background. So kickboxing, Muay Thai, I'm just used to rematches. I'm used to growing up and seeing my heroes, Ernesto Hus and Peter Arts fight a lot. I'm used to, if there is, K1 literally had cards called Revenge, where they would put two people who, fought, and there was a victory on one side or the other, and then they'd have a rematch, a whole card full of rematches. So that's where I grew up. So when those offers come, they don't bother me. Now, clearly, when you're building your resume, you want as many names on it as you can. So when Johnny won the title, we would have preferred to fight like a Matt Brown right away, just because Matt Brown was hot at the time, and you want to kind of beat somebody who also has some recognition. We ended up beating Matt Brown the fight after that, but the buzz wasn't the same. It was all just a little bit different. So for me, I've got no problem as far as the rematch thing goes. But because, as you can see, with Bisping, getting the GSP news earlier today, Bisping's legacy now looks like it is 46-year-old, and then the returning, 170-pound champion, from 3 years gone, moving up in weight class. So he's not going against Romero. He's not going against Jacare. And if he were to win close, don't rule out him asking for a rematch. It's a different game now. People ask for money now, and they want to put themselves in those opportunities. It's definitely there used to be a period of time where, like, boxing or MMA would look down on boxing because they have all those alphabet titles. Now we have all these interim titles, which are just the same as alphabet titles. So it's like, when you look at how rematches are, they definitely play into how the culture of MMA is now. So unless you're Demetrius Johnson taking on all comers, a lot of these guys are still looking for the best payday, and that might be in a rematch. So I guess it's kind of preparing for it. I've got no problem with it because of where I come from. But the culture of today's fighting means that either you're going to see it or you're not, and it has nothing to do with styles.
Okay, definitely. That's definitely a unique take on it. A lot of guys I've talked to say they often they just don't like the idea of rematches, especially whether it's a draw or anything. They like to just go on to the next one. I've kind of gotten the impression that they feel that there's a better chance of that guy figuring them out on the second go round. They like to just kind of get their business done and move on to the next challenge. And nobody's actually come out and said that. Into the concerns or issues they start having, or the things they start talking about as far as their strategy, it becomes clear in terms that the gap may have been closed, or the advantage they had no longer exists at the level it did before, because that person has that personal experience, which changes how effective you are moving forward, unless you made those big changes. So that's actually an answer I've never heard before. So thank you for that.
No problem.
I actually wanted to talk a little bit. We've talked about this before a little bit on Twitter. As being a trainer, there's not many. We don't often see a lot of trainers. How do I put this politically correctly? We don't see many African American trainers very often. And mostly we actually see the same, probably the same 3 to 5 guys in the majority of corners for most MMA fighters. And I just wanted to get kind of your opinion on why that is, because from my opinion, it seems like people read. I've been to gyms before, and I'll talk to people, and they'll be like, well, I'm going to go train at Jackson's. I'm going to go over here. And those are all great camps, Hume's camps, Jackson's, ATT. But it's like everybody just spits out the same stuff I read in articles. I'm like, have you ever known anybody who's trained there? Have you talked to the coaches? Have you talked to the fighters? And they're just like, no, but so-and-so is a great strategist. So-and-so is a great stand-up guy. And I'm But if you kind of look at it objectively, you see where that person has limitations and flaws, and you don't know why that guys who are doing this as a career instantly just want to go the same place everybody else is going and assume that's going to fix their problems or address whatever issues they're having. So as a trainer, why do you think that is? Why do you think we don't see as much exposure from a variety of coaches, or maybe a variety of coaches from different backgrounds?
Well, I would definitely say, first of all, the culture of MMA is still birthed from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And for those who are wondering, the difference between Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and what I would consider Japanese style Jiu-Jitsu, Japanese style is more open, and I'd say Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is definitely guard play Jiu-Jitsu, like its base is there. Not saying that they don't have every tool, I'm just saying that its base seems to be around there. Responses and playing from the guard. So because of that, you're going to have a culture of people. So let's look at Holland, for example. The reason why Holland is hot for kickboxing was because in the 70s, Tom Harnink and Jan Paas and certain guys went down to Thailand, with the karate style, and then they all lost. And then they were like, well, we got to get better. We're going to stay. So he stayed for a few extra months. And then they realized they had more success with the boxing and with the low kicks because the Thais score the body kick the strongest. And they score the clinch and the elbows the stronger. So all of a sudden, just add some years to that and you get the Dutch kickboxing style. But on top of that, you get guys to go travel and fight and have success internationally and so on. And there's a group of kids that grow up and see that on TV. And if you grow up and you see it on TV, you want to be it one day. So, we get K1 down the road with guys like Remy Bonjowski, Badr Hari, who grew up watching certain people on TV. In that way, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had, Royce Gracie, and then other guys from, Brazil go over to Pride and, in some cases UFC, make a lot of money and get a lot of exposure. So because of that, a lot of people are going to gravitate towards a coach that has a big time background in grappling. So that's one side of it is why you'll see a lot more Brazilians tend to want to go to a place where there are other Brazilian coaches. So that's why you got Novo Inhaus really doing their thing in Brazil, a couple other gyms there, but then ATT because they are seen as like the feeder system. Like you come in here, I'm sure they got guys that help you with visas, guys that help you with housing. They've got a lot of stuff in that situation. So that is why ATT will be hot and will be known. Blackzilians, same thing. Some of those guys broke off of ATT, and then at the same time, Rashad Evans using Tyrone Spong for help, coaching came together, and then next thing you know, the Blackzilians are formed. Despite what's happening now, that's kind of how they came together. So add that part of it, and then of course the other part of it is who has the resources to open gyms and have gyms run successfully. And sometimes it's just timing. So Diego Sanchez was really the main fighter for Jackson back in the day, but he gets in the Ultimate Fighter, dominates the Ultimate Fighter, then all of a sudden, you start coaching the Ultimate Fighter, you get around athletes, and it's a great way for you to build your gym. You say, hey, come out and train with me, yada, 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 that kind of deal, whatever. Not to mention the homegrown athletes you're already working with. And then it helps you that every time you watch TV, it's like a commercial for them every single time. Especially because Goldberg's not really a research guy as far as looking up the athletes. He's more like your TV spot guy. You know what I'm saying? Like this product brought to you by Zions or that kind of deal, whatever. So he's going to just say the same names every single time. Oh, this person goes to this gym. And they'll mention the same names in MMA every single time, the people who were there right when it kind of started. So for anybody new, any kind of coach, it's a little bit tougher. So Mark Henry's starting to get a little bit of love in the last few years. And it's because guys like Ariel Helwani are kind of putting the effort into saying their name aloud. But anybody new coming in, you've got to be in the corner enough for them to recognize you and follow. Like Anik knows who I am, Stan knows who I am. But for the most part, a lot of different, Rogan might know me from sight, but we've never really kind of had long conversation together. But he'd still say, if I'm in the corner, he'd still say Johnny Hendricks' corner. But if Mark Lehman's in the corner, he'd say Mark Lehman because Mark's been there for a long time. So now I haven't worked with Mark for a while, but he still has that history. And ATT's got that history and AKA's got that history. There's nothing any new coach can do about that. If you're going to build your own team, you're going to get more fighters in. You just got to get yourself to where you're working UFC fight like every month, and then that's your best way to do it. And the problem, of course, as I said before, because they're like a commercial every time a UFC guy goes out there for those gyms, it is a commercial for their gym. It's a commercial to have, so-and-so's going to Jackson's gym. It helps them so much. So that's why there's like Russian fighters who use all their money to go over to Albuquerque and train at Jackson's, not knowing anything about it, not knowing if the style fits them. All they know is that Jackson is world class because TV's been telling it for the past 5 years. Not to mention Jackson's been in this game for a long time. He knows what he's doing. But I'm just saying it's always going to be harder for new people to break in. There's a reason why it's like the same NFL coaches. You know what I'm saying? Like this isn't a MMA specific thing. It's like the same coaches in almost every sport. So eventually, I'm hoping, I get more athletes in and they start saying my name a little bit more. Of course, it's going to help my brand. But as far as my knowledge in the sport, the time I put into it, the skill I believe that I can teach, I feel like I don't look at anybody in the world and say they're better than me. I mean, I'm ready to compete with those guys. But you've got to build the athletes from scratch if you can't get the migration. So that's kind of where I am now.
See, and the problem with that is, I understand. See, you watch other sports. I watch other sports. A lot of MMA fans just watch mixed martial arts, the hardcore fans. But the thing is, in football, even in basketball, they might have the same coaches and retreads, but the fans are smart enough. Like most people have played basketball or football at some kind of level, so they understand it past the platonic level. He's competed in MMA and he trains people. He's worked with fighters. I've never competed, but I've trained. I've sparred with pros. I've helped coach people. So I get it. I don't know that fans get it because I don't know how much they know about the action. I hate to say this, but I don't know how many fighters are actually students of the game. I've talked to a few fighters. One you and me both know, King Mo. King Mo's a student of the game. The reason me and him get along is because you can go back and forth over little tiny subtle aspects of the boxing game, the wrestling game, the grappling game, putting it all together. But I've talked to other fighters, and they literally only do what their coach tells them. They don't have any concept of strategy or controlling the flow of a fight or different kind of counters or setups. It's like 1, 2, 3 is what they know, and that's all they do. They don't have any sort of concept of what's going on outside of their own sphere of influence. So if fighters would know better, but a lot of fighters don't. And I don't mean that they're not intelligent. They don't pay attention to the game to the level that athletes in other sports do. Tom Brady knows football in and out. LeBron James knows basketball in and out. Some of the best fighters in the UFC don't know fighting in and out. They know they're fighting, but they don't know fighting as a whole. And some of the guys coming in, I see them with these camps, and some of the game plans they have and some of the execution I see, and it seems like either the camp's not doing their job or the fighter has a huge issue with cage IQ because they can't seem to figure out what to do in certain spots. And it's costing them fights, or even if they're winning, it's having them take a huge amount of damage as a result. So I think a lot of the issue is just a lack of understanding of the finer points in the different styles within mixed martial art. And I don't mean just like striking or grappling. I mean like the different styles of striking, the boxer puncher, the counter guy, the lead guy, the volume guy. I've talked to a lot of guys in gyms and they don't even know what I'm talking about. They're looking at me like I'm speaking another language.
It's weird that you're bringing that up because for me, it just started with I fell in love with the sport. It starts there for me, and again, my dream was to fight in K1 and I wasn't able to accomplish my dream. We just ran out of kickboxing. It just dried up in the mid 2000s and then the opportunities that K1 had were smaller and smaller. And then of course you get contracts like what Glory had with Overeem. And then that contract included like 4 other guys that was on their roster. And it's just harder to get, the spots got more difficult to get a hold of. So for me, I fell in love with the sport and I wanted to pursue it full, but it didn't, the opportunities didn't work out for me. So when I went into coaching, which just kind of happened on a whim, I'd already come from that, and I'd already been a big film junkie who I don't just break this stuff down because I like, I'm doing it for work. I love combat sports. I love it. I can't wait for a Garcia Thurman. I can't wait to talk on my podcast about the kickboxing events between K1 and Glory that just went down this past weekend. Like, I love it. It's what I love to do. And I don't think that it necessarily equates success, because you could know all that stuff and not win. You could be as a junkie like me and not win. But at the same time, these athletes who are out there, out here right now, I definitely think that it would help their game. But I also understand that a lot of them just kind of leave things to their coaches. I've got a mixed bag in my team. Johnny Hendricks, if I could put film in front of him, he'll like break it down and he'll have a great understanding. He reads things so well, but on his own, he doesn't really think to look at film. If he's invited to a UFC event to sit in the crowd, he'll be able to pick things apart and he'll explain things to you that you didn't see at all. But on his own, he won't sit down and watch anything. So there are fighters who come up to him and ask him, shake his hand, tell him he's awesome, that kind of stuff, whatever. They'll have like 8 fights in the UFC and he'll have no idea who they are. It's just who he is. He just doesn't pay attention to it. Another one of my UFC fighters, Abdul Al-Hassan, he hates looking at film because it'll make him think about what his opponent's doing and not what he's going to do. So he'll just tell me to tell him what to do. And he goes out there and does it. And, we've had success so far. So I have that. And then I've got a guy, Mark De La Rosa, who's up and coming from me, who's 8-0, fights at, 135 and 125. And this kid, the moment he gets a fight, he puts a picture of that person winning in his phone. So that every time he looks at the phone, he sees them with their hand raised, and it's motivation for him. He watches all their fights over and over. He can tell you what they're going to do, when they're going to do it. He's just different. So I think that every fighter gets up for it differently. Now, you're always going to be better off. I grew up wanting to be a football player, and I watched football. I watched it all the time. So you're always going to be better off watching the greats. I loved Bobby Taylor. I loved Raheem Ishmael. I loved just guys, Deion Sanders, Rod Woodson. I loved these guys who played corner and receiver. So I watched and I learned from them. You are always going to be at a benefit if you sit down, you watch Sugar Ray Leonard, Ray Robinson, I wouldn't say Ali because you got to be a certain kind of athlete to be Ali,
Yeah.
but
Ali's like a Roy Jones, athleticism.
Exactly. But like a Winky Wright, Jermaine Taylor, you may not like everything about him, but he had a really good jab. He's a really good athlete, and he fought everybody there was to fight. You can say one thing about Jermaine Taylor. If you look at his record, you go, hey, I can't think of too many big names he didn't fight. I mean, he lost, but he went out there, he went against those guys. So you can always learn from these athletes, and it will always add to your game. It will never take from your game. So that's the main reason why I would suggest people do it. But you are 100% right. There is a community of people who they only want to be involved with their fights and nothing else.
Yeah, I always find, if you listen to our show before, and Raphael will tell you this, I get frustrated a little bit with the fighters, but I really take it in. As a corner man, you can address this with me. I'm pretty hard on corners, not because I don't understand how difficult it is. I have friends who corner boxing, amateur. I've actually sat in on some corners. I get all that, but I feel like if a fighter's underneath you, it's your job to get them the best tools and the best avenues to victory. And if they're going to lose, which you don't want to do, you want to give them the skills where they can defend themselves, where they're not taking huge amounts of punishment, where their career doesn't turn in the opposite direction. And I feel like a lot of coaches are getting by on the athleticism of their fighters and getting by on a brand name that they have from a point where maybe they were on the cutting edge of MMA. So I call out a lot of corners because I feel like they're not addressing things. I feel like preparing for a fight, you need to be working on all the other skills. The fight training is for a specific opponent. When you don't have a fight plan, you're supposed to be working on everything. If your wrestling's a little weak, your transitions are a little weak. If you don't know how to work a basic jab, if you don't know how to body punch, if you don't know how to counter, those are things you should be working on in the meantime until you get a fight. And then you kind of funnel it in and focus on that specific opponent. And I feel like a lot of gyms and a lot of fighters, a lot of gyms don't do that. And a lot of fighters ask for it. They're leaving it in their coaches' hands, and their coaches aren't doing their job. Their coaches, in my opinion, aren't doing right by them, but giving them all the skills they can to win. If not win, at least not get ruined in a fight. Because there's some guys who lose fights. You can lose a fight, and then you can lose a fight. And certain guys have lost fights, and they've never been the same because they didn't know how to effectively slip punches. They didn't know how to pivot. They didn't know when to go for a takedown to avoid the punishment there, pivot off the fence and turn someone else to. Just simple, basic things that everybody should know. They have no idea how to do, but they're with the camp that's taking their money, using their name to get in business. So I feel like to the fighters. You owe it to the fighters to make them the best version of themselves and to protect them from themselves and from their opponents.
Yeah, I guess for me in the corner, I usually break it down in 3 ways. Number one, there's usually me and one other person talking. So it's either the Tony Cabela's boxing coach in this area. He and I work a lot of corners together. That's my guy. I'll work with Tony Cabela until I die. So when we're in the corner, and I also had this when I worked with Mark Lehman, I usually talked first and Lehman usually talked second. So I knew I had a certain amount of time to, get off the information that I had before I let Mark take over. So literally when I get in, I usually say deep breath and I give him some water. And then I make it clear, this is where you're having offensive success. If we're getting hit, I'll say, this is where you're getting hit. This is how you take away from it. And then number 3, this is what we need to do right now. This is where we're having success. This is how we're, these are the things that are having success against us. This is how we take those things away and have success ourselves. So I need to have an answer for you every time you go to the corner. Very little are you going to hear me say rah stuff. It's just not my style. But there are a lot of athletes that respond to that really, really well. It's just not my style. My style is usually I'm going to tell you what you need to do to win. And if you're losing, what you need to do to stop losing. And that's usually kind of what I do when I get in the corner. So I'll just use a couple weeks ago with Johnny. After we got back from round 1, I just pretty much said, hey, volume is the only thing that's because we're waiting a little bit too much because, I'm a volume guy but as a coach. So I felt we were waiting a little bit too much. Definitely stressed that, we're doing a good job as far as the counter wrestling goes. We had to get into our own offense. Look for your takedowns because he sits heavy on this, his lead leg. And then the boxing coach had said something. And then the final thing I said is, start playing off of your takedowns, takedown fakes. You can come up with offense every single time because he's defending hard. At that point, you had to have trained it before you got there. And for me, lucky enough, Johnny Hendricks has got just a great mind for seeing things. So that week of the fight, we probably worked the knees on, maybe one of the days, but the other day we really didn't work the knees and the kicks because we just wanted to make sure that our weight cut wasn't brutal. We just wanted to do it healthy, and we did just a lot of stuff with just punching and getting the weight off. But fight night, he went for a takedown, and we watched how really, really quick Hector fired his hip back to get his leg out of the way. And it told us right away that we've got offense afterwards. That's just too much effort to get your hip out of the way. You're too worried about the takedowns, which means you're not worried about other things. Then Johnny goes out there and have offensive success. Between the next 2 rounds, I say the knees are taking over this fight. I say a couple other things, along those lines. Boxing coach comes in and says, look, make sure now's the time to really sit in your left hand, that kind of deal, whatever. And then, of course, we make our calls throughout. I am usually going to be a guy who says something instruction-wise. The only time you'll even hear me say something along the lines of tired is if it's in game plan. So for that one, we knew that we would, because of his explosion, because that he wears a little bit after he throws his power, we knew that it's important for us to get into wrestling exchanges right away. So that's one thing I also said in the corner after round 1. I said you did a good job in that round of getting into tie-ups, getting into over-unders, because those are the things that are going to take from his gas tank down the road. And then 3rd round, we had our way. So that's just my style as a coach. I usually have watched a fighter so much that I know what they want to do to have success. And usually if I know what you're going to do to have success, that's the root of how I beat you. I don't beat you because I think of, I find the cheat code, I don't have the contra code or anything like that for the MMA game. But if I know how an athlete needs to have success against me, I know how I can build against it. So we knew what he needed to have success. We knew if he landed anything big, we needed to stay poised. We couldn't bail because if we bail, he's going to try to, hunt you down. And when he did land a couple shots on Johnny was composed and right there. And then Hector realized he had to start all over. I think as a coach, you owe it to your fighter to always have an answer in the corner. And I think that that's the most important thing. So I hate to throw a guy under the bus, but an example of a guy who probably wishes he had a moment back in the Kelly Pavlik fight with Bernard Hopkins. Kelly got into round 9, and he says 9 or 10, and he says to Jack Lowe, he says, what did I do out there? And Jack Lowe said, I don't know, but you got to do something. In my mind, as a coach, I feel like if he's looking back in that moment, I bet you he wishes that he gave an answer. Even if the answer didn't work, I wish he gave an answer. But to me as a coach, I can't do that to my athletes. If you ask me anything, I've got an answer for you. And I know this game enough to be able to give you an answer. Now, sometimes it comes down to the guy's just better. But if you're a coach, you owe it to your fighter to always have an answer to something. Even if it's, oh gosh, what's the name of that movie? There's like a submarine movie. I think it's no, the one with Matthew McConaughey. I think it's like U47 something. Anyways, in it, Matthew McConaughey doesn't have an answer for something, and then one of the guys who's older but not McConaughey commands him. He says, you always have to have an answer in your position. When guys go out there and compete, and when girls go out there and compete, really their lives are in your hand. A lot of people think, because boxing gets hit so much more, it's more dangerous, or kickboxing or football, whatever it is, it's more dangerous. No. It takes one shot to take someone's life. Okay, just takes one. So when these athletes put themselves on the line out there, they really are doing something phenomenal. They are doing something that's scary. They're daring to be great in a very unique way. And that's every single person that's ever gone to the cage. I don't care what your skill level is. You put yourself out there in a very different way. As a coach, it is your responsibility to have an answer. Even if the answer is throwing in the towel, you have to have an answer for your athletes. And I guess that's kind of why I come from the view that I come from. So as far as you getting on coaches and so on about cornering, I mean, for me as a coach, if you give, bad cornering on the other side, I mean, that's on you. But I know that if my athletes listen to me, it's like we're all fighting one guy, as opposed to just you fighting him.
Okay, but I understand that. I always feel like there's a certain investment with the coaches. I mean, I know the coaches aren't in there fighting, but I know coaches like to, again, especially against certain coaches, they like to have that name on their resume. Like to have, I coach against Greg Jackson. I'm 2-0 against him. I'm 3-0 against Cordero. I know that stuff. It matters to a lot of people, not in the way that it overshadows the fighter, but it does matter because that's an example of how your game plan and your skills and your experience were able to face up against somebody who's equally skilled, or as far as the public's considered, superiorly skilled in comparison. So I know that's important to coaches. Just to get you back a little bit on UFC 209, there's a fight coming up between Ferguson and I can't say his name right. I just wanted to get a little bit of your perspective on that, because that's what everybody's considering to be one of the best fights in UFC history as far as the skill sets, the ranks, and the records of the guys involved. And I know a lot of the fight is going to be, people assume it's going to be decided on the ground, but I wanted to get your take on it from a guy who's been very experienced, kind of seen it, broke every angle of the MMA game. How do you see this fight going?
I don't want to sound like, I'm not giving a full answer, but for me, it's simple. As long as the fight's on the feet, Ferguson's going to be winning. As long as the fight's on the ground, I think Khabib's going to be winning. I think because Ferguson, the way he plays his grappling, he's just really super aggressive towards submissions, and then people freak out and they get out of there. He holds onto arms, really heavy, and he'll pivot on things, and he'll attack leg locks and stuff like that. And I think a very power control guy like Khabib, he gets a hold of you, you're staying down. And Khabib, when he went against that kid who took the fight on short notice last year, he went into a series that started the second round where he went to like 4 or 5 different takedown attempt series. He just kept chaining them together until he got his guy in the ground. And I was like, this dude's special. Clearly, when he went against Johnson, when they were on the feet, Johnson was tooling him, like just piecing him up. And Ferguson's got to see that and say, okay, I'm going to have advantages here. But Ferguson's really not that type of a guy. He's not like a pick you apart kind of guy. He's just a train that just keeps going. Like he just keeps throwing. He just keeps throwing. He keeps building offense. And the next thing you know, you've been trying to punch with him and you can't punch anymore and he can still go. And when you go on the ground, he's got his darts down. So if you go down and you try to come up on a single with him, he's punching through every single time. Or if you end up in any type of fetus position due to ground and pound or whatever, you can forget about it. He's going to pull your head up and punch through. Like he's always looking for that, and he knows how to finish it. He's very, very tough there. So I'm assuming that he's thinking once I get on the ground, I'll have my opportunities because I've got 25 minutes to find a sub. With that said, those 25 minutes feel longer and seem like the opportunity is going to get further away from you when you get the kind of control that Khabib brings. Because Khabib kept trapping the arm with Johnson and just kept, under the armpits, under armpits, body, head, kept playing it. As soon as he loses the trapping is just when you have one of the arms secured and you're punching with the other hand. If you have an arm secured, body control, and you're still punching, that's kind of how we play with. That's a full level of trapping. And he's able to do that to Johnson a lot after Johnson had his moments on the feet. And then after that, just the wear of it made the next takedown easier. So Ferguson, who last lost to Johnson, he's got all the tools to score effectively offensively for a long period of time. But I'm not as confident in his ability to play underhooks and it's like Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor's much better at defending takedowns in the cage than he is in space. I think that Ferguson will have moments where he might defend a couple, but because they just keep getting chained, he's going to end up on his back. And then it's just how fresh can you be when you're pivoting on arms and so on. So luckily for him, Khabib's probably going to start off for the first 2.5 minutes on the feet. And who knows where Khabib's head is after his dad and brother couldn't get into the country, training partner couldn't get into the country. But man, if I just go styles, I just don't see enough growth in Khabib in the stand-up game to make me think that he would even be remotely competitive with Ferguson unless he landed something crazy. But as far as, beginning, middle, and end are, like the way I try to say it is, your striking game should add to a finish. Like it should be a movie that builds in a certain direction. So like, I don't see that ever from Khabib. Either he lands something big over the top or he gets into his wrestling. Meanwhile, I look at Ferguson. Ferguson's striking does do that. It starts off with small shots. It's got some flash in it with spinning offense and elbows and so on. But then the next thing you know, it just builds into this avalanche and you can't get him off of you. And the next thing you know, it's better to stay behind your guard. Not to mention his chin, because Barbosa hit him a lot. It just didn't matter. Just the train kept going and he kept getting hit back. So that's kind of how I see it playing out. If you put a gun to my head and made me pick winner, I would go Khabib because I definitely like what his wrestling game can do for long periods of time. And he's got the bigger wins, I would say. But man, Ferguson, it's a fun fight. And I really do think that it's going to be fight of the night. I do think it's the fight that most people are looking forward to. Unfortunately, even though their fight, was, decently entertaining, but it was only entertaining in spots, I'd say, with Woodley and Wonderboy. But most of it was just Woodley kind of winning, boxing, and going. Rounds 2 and 3 really had a lot of that feel until some big shots landed. And then round 5 was back to 2 and 3. So I think that this one's going to steal the show. It's the people are most interested in, and they had to make it for an interim title because they needed to make it 5 fights, but the 5 rounds. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I lean Khabib's wrestling to take the day, but the fans are right to be excited for it. Ferguson.
Let me ask you a question, Steven. Like with Tony, I know he has a heavy background. I know he used to spar with Victor Ortiz in the years back. He used to get a lot of work with pro boxers. And you're a big football fan, so you might know that I've heard this. I talked to Michael Irvin. Actually made this quote years ago. He's like, "You attack a man's weakness to beat him. You attack a man's strength to break him."
Mm-hmm.
Is in my opinion that Miguel Torres mindset. Like he'll fight you in your best area to prove that he can beat you because he doesn't want to beat you. He wants to break you. And Aaron, I've seen when he's fought, he forced the fight on the feet with Barbosa. He was in extended grappling exchanges with Castillo. When he fought Venata, instead of he has a jab, he knows how to throw combinations. He knows how to work the body. He knows how to transition from punching range into the wrestling range. But for some reason, he just came out and tried to bulldoze him. A lot of people are going to tell me that's because he thought he didn't know who the guy was. He was overconfident. But it's in his fights. He continually attacks people in their biggest area of strength to kind of take their heart or to take their confidence. And then he brings you into his area of strength and finishes you.
For sure. Well, really. Oh, go ahead.
I said that's basically my concern for him because I think he's a good guy, but a lot of his skill to me is his ability to transition from all the ranges, the kicking, to punching, to clinching, to wrestling, to grappling. And his versatility is what makes him effective. But a lot of times he throws away his versatility to challenge you in your A game because he wants to prove a point when he fights you. Like I'm not scared to exchange with you. I'm not scared to wrestle with you. And I think that's something that has had him on a tightrope. I think a lot of the fights he's won later on have been fights he could have easily lost had his chin not held up, had one move, had one thing gone one way or the other. I don't think it was a clear domination as people make it out to be.
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is you just got to know the monster you're doing it against. There are some guys you can get away with doing that, and on your way up the ranks, that you are able to get away with doing some of that stuff. But when you get to the top, I mean, you got to have your skill, you got to have your identity down. You can't just go out there thinking my game plan for this fight will be to break somebody, beat them in their game. You're going to run into not just one guy, but a lot of guys you can't beat in their game. It's what they do. So don't rule out the possibility that in one of those random scrambles that he's able to get Khabib in something. I mean, he would have to break Khabib's leg off to get him in a leg lock. Like, I just don't see Khabib tapping to anything like that. He'd rather let the ankle break and fight on one leg than tap to something like that. Not ruling out it as a possibility. I'm saying when he gets on his back, I know that he will probably, and he can get himself up, but I know that he will probably look to play some aggressive submission game and so on. And you are right to worry because Khabib knows how to play the right kind of heavy. And Khabib's not huge. Khabib is a guy who really just understands wrestling position, tying you up, and then wearing on you. Like, a guy who I work with, Kamaru Usman. He knows his identity. As somebody comes out there and says, I'm going to beat Kamaru Usman and pressure wrestling on the cage, good luck. You know what I'm saying? You just got to know your monster. You know who you're playing it with. Because in the end, Kamaru knows how to do that for 3, 4, 5 rounds. And he'll get you. He'll get stronger at doing what he does in round 3. Khabib will get stronger at doing what he does in rounds 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 if you allow it. So really, you've got a great skill. You've got the advantage on the feet. So if you can just beat him with where you're superior, that's where you're going to be great at. But as far as that Irving quote, it is true and it is awesome because it does mess with somebody. If you had a guy who's like a wrestler and you come out there and you start taking him down, it'll mess with him mentally. Or if somebody feels like they've got, their takedown game really, or their get up game really good, and you go out there and you get a takedown, they get up right away, you retake them down, go ahead and do that for 2 rounds, see what happens to them mentally. There is something about beating someone in their strengths, and it can break them. But when you get to the best guys in the world, the chances of doing that goes way down. So it'll be interesting. It'll be fun to see how this goes. Shout out to Irving. He's a real nice dude. I see him at several UFC events. But yeah, I just don't see it. I just don't see either guy losing because of something mental. If they do start to lose, it could just be the wear of what the other person's doing, and sometimes that's, if you're getting wrestled a lot, it's not that you mentally break down. Like, I don't think Johnson mentally broke down when he's fighting Khabib. I just think he was stuck. And as you're stuck, you're getting beat up, you start to wear down just from the physical work, and then, I mean, that can come into play, but he goes out there. It's not like he didn't get off the stool. It's not like he didn't try to throw punches. It's just the wear of what that does to you physically comes into play. And I think both guys have had the advantage of beating people in the mental game and fights before. But I think that when you get to the highest of level, it's so tough to get a, Cain Velasquez to break mentally, it's just tougher with certain athletes. And I think that this is going to be one of those fights. You've got to have the numbers, not just the style. You got to have the number of takedowns or the number of offensive strikes to really break one of these 2 guys down.
Yeah, it comes to a lot of factors. That's one thing I've had to really learn is you can have a strategy, you can have a scheme, because as most people know, you're a college football fan, and I often compare MMA or combat sports to college football, because in college football, even if there's a big talent gap, to a certain degree, you can scheme anybody. You can set up different stances. You can control them, and depending on how focused they are or how mentally tough they are when they get put in that spot, you can beat anybody to a certain degree on any given day. But there's limits to that, because when the talent gap reaches a certain point, that's when you start seeing, later on, you'll see the class, like they say in football, the class shows over the period of time, where in basketball, over the 7-game series, the best team's going to win if it goes to full 7, because you can jump to an early lead, but eventually the talent's going to come to the top. And that's what happens in a lot of fights. I have a question. Basically, when you have a fighter who maybe who maybe doesn't have certain advantages or maybe is outclassed to a certain degree physically, how is it that because a lot of fighters I've talked to seem to think wrestle really well. Everybody thinks they have a knockout punch. Everybody thinks they're super durable, regardless of what the results have shown them athletically with anybody. So they sometimes dismiss the athletic advantage a fighter has over them. And as a result, that usually has a high price that makes them pay because they're not respecting what that person can do physically. I know you don't want to rein people in. I know you want to build that confidence, but there has to be a certain amount of awareness of explosiveness or strength or power for you to come up with an effective game plan. For them to execute, they have to respect those things and don't seem to have a awareness. So how do you resolve that? How do you get that point across to them that they need to be aware of this, or that maybe they don't want to be in this spot with this guy? Because a lot of guys have the confidence that, I can bang it out with him. I can trade punches with Mark Hunt. I don't know if you can.
It's at some period of time, the trust has got to be developed between you and your athlete. And if they trust your word and they trust your vision on something, they're usually going to submit to whatever you have for them. Like Johnny Hendricks has said so many times over the years, when we asked about schedule, he'll say, whatever you guys say the schedule is. And then when he asks about opponent, he goes, whatever opponent you guys want. Like literally, he's just submissive to, these individuals are going to put me in the best position to have success. So I'm going to trust their knowledge there. So that's kind of how I've always taken that kind of, as far as that view of it. At some period of time, they got to believe you. Now, I understand that, and every coach should understand, sometimes the moment takes it, and I've had fighters who they've just pursued a KO just because they thought the moment was there. And in my mind, I want to yell and say, no, that's not what we worked. But at the same time, you got to let a shark be a shark. And normally I'm going to just tell you to clean it up. But if you feel like you've got a KO, I'm going to let you go. With that said, it's really, really important that people understand your coach wants you to win just almost as much as you. I won't say just as much, but almost as much as you. So ideally, they're going to move you in a certain way where they feel like you can have success. And if you're going against a guy that's a banger, they're going to do everything in their power to keep you away from getting those big shots. If you are determined to exchange, if they, the biggest thing is sometimes you just got to get people on the stool. And then when you get them on a stool, you can explain and work them out of it. But in MMA, it's a stoppage sport. So sometimes you don't get that opportunity. So, going into round one, you got to let them know, like, hey, this is what's a risk here. You can go for it here, but understand that this guy's got a mean left hook, and he's used to finding his shot in exchanges. So if you go for it, you are giving this up. You've got to be careful. You can't give this kind of offense away. You've got to be careful about how you play the exchange game. But then you got to let a fighter be a fighter. Sometimes you can get people to cut all the way off, and other times not so much. So, Jermaine Durandami pretty much won the first 3 rounds with counter right hands. That's all she did, but it was clear that Holly Holm wasn't trying to exchange with her. Holly Holm is usually a person that goes first or goes second, but Ronda gave her the opportunities to land the counters. But when she's got to find her own offense, she usually kind of streams together like a combo, and people are able to play just outside of it. Doesn't mean that she's, isn't skilled or whatever. It just means that it's a little bit tougher to find people sometimes when they're that level of skill in kickboxing, like a Shevchenko and like a Jermaine Durandami is. So if you've got Jermaine, and that, you can win that counter shot offense. And if you've got Holly Holm, it's to your benefit to say, Holly, we're just going to land with, singles or combination flurry and move to the side. She's just going to sit on counter rights. She's just going to sit on counter rights. You've got to try to build your offense against what somebody else is doing. And she was wired to not be in those exchanges. And what happened after the fight, Jermaine said that she was upset because she thought that there was going to be more of a war, that she was going to come to fight. And she was wired to do what her coaches said. And no matter what anybody feels, about how her performance, success or not, she didn't get in there and get caught with nothing crazy. Holly Holm stayed to the discipline despite the athlete that was in front, because of the athlete that was in front of her. So I think that you always have to be of that mentality that trust us. trust us in the corner. Trust us in the corner. Understand that, if we're going to give up anything, we'll give up the counter right, but we're not going to give up the counter right, the hook, and the right hand. So if she got hit, she restarted. She didn't go in there and look to start punching again. And, sometimes they're too hurt, like in a situation with Ronda Rousey, with Holly Holm. She was hurt. And then at that point where you're like yelling instructions, her mind's in a different place and she's just looking to go, and it runs you into more things. So don't go thinking that even if you prepare for it, that the moment of a fight won't stop it. But I really do believe that if you've got an athlete that's just reckless despite it, that might just be their identity, and you got to try to match them accordingly. But they're always going to run into that person. You just can't exchange with everybody without ever getting caught. So that's just the nature of how this thing works.
Yeah, I just had one thing. And I always wonder this as a person who watches fights and comments on fights and analyzes them. And we're coming up on it, so I hate to cut you short, but I just want to get kind of a quick answer on this. When you have a fighter who doesn't follow the game plan, I've gotten the impression that certain coaches take it personally, like this fighter failed. And I know there's a financial quality to that because look at Edmund Tardovian. Excuse me, I can't say his name right. When Ronda's winning, everybody comes to him. She starts losing, everybody's tearing him apart, and his reputation and his business has reflected that. So I understand how coaches get so invested in it. But on your end, do you take that like to heart? Do you start thinking this person's making me feel bad? I might have to cut him loose or send him somewhere else because people are applying these game plans or these adjustments to me because we don't know everything that's going on. We have to assume at some point that either you're not preparing him or he's not listening, which means either you're not communicating, you don't have his trust, or you don't know what you're doing. It's either one or the other. It's very rarely some idiosyncratic reason. So I just wanted a quick answer for you, like how you feel about that. Like, does that hit you? Does that feeling kind of hit you?
For me, as a coach, we win together and we lose together. Simple as that. Simple as that. It's always going to be that. So if I go out there and I say, hey, this is what opening's there, this was happening, and so on. If I yell a command that I think will give you offensive success, that will get you out of danger, whatever. If you didn't listen, if it didn't happen that way, if you lose, we lose. Simple as that. It's never, if they had to listen to me, that's not how I get down as a coach. As a coach, it's very important to me that no matter what happens out there, it's us. We walk in this. So I was able, blessed to have the opportunity to win a world championship with a guy. And I've also been on the side of, big time KOs early, big time KO losses early. It's just, you do this sport long enough, you're on both sides of it. There's nothing you can do about it. I don't care how great a coach you are. There's nothing you can do about it. Your day is coming on every side of this game. That's just kind of how it is. So the main thing that I would tell people, I personally let the athlete know that I desire their success very much, and that I'm always going to yell something that I think puts them in position to have success. If it doesn't go that way, or if they feel something, or if they get, if they pursue something, or it doesn't work out, or they weren't listening, whatever, I got to credit the opposition. You always got to credit the opposition in this game because there's a loser in every fight. Like, 99% of the time, there's a loser in every fight. And I just kind of go from there. And I just, I've never been one of those people who take offense to it. Now, you and I watch boxing. Sometimes you listen to boxing corners, and these guys are hot. You know what I'm saying? They are so mad that what the athlete's doing out there is just messing their day up. Like, they're just yelling like, whatever, I done told you to stop doing yada, yada, yada. And all you got to do is that kind of stuff, whatever. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Ain't nobody punching you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of how I see it. Like, sometimes I'm like, just calm down. Give them the tools that you think they need to be successful. It's not, a 1-minute opportunity for you to, express your displeasure. It really, really is this great, great, beautiful, yet violent combat sport. And they need you. They need you on those times. They need you in the up and they need you in the down. So when you have those moments and you go out there and you don't have success, it doesn't necessarily reflect the skill level of the coaches. Sometimes it's just the athlete you have with you. I don't think that Freddie Roach was made a better coach than Floyd Mayweather Sr. when Hatton was knocked out by Pacquiao. I don't feel that way. I feel that Pacquiao was better than Hatton, just better than Hatton. And that's kind of how this game goes. So I would just implore any coach that's listening to this or anybody who's thinking about coaching and so on, let it always be we, because it really is a wonderful sport. And I've been in that winning locker room so much, and I've been in that losing locker room some. And every time, sit down with the athlete, tell them you love them, walk them, because they didn't want to fail you. They didn't want to go out there and, we're old school for, people who've been in this game for a while. Your loss does reflect your coach and reflect your gym and, where you come from, and they feel it bad enough. So I've had moments where in the back I've had to hold my tongue because I've watched coaches just tear into their fighters after they lost. And in my mind, I go, I need to say something to this person so that they stop talking crazy. But I also have to realize it's not my place. It's them and their athlete. But if you come and you train with me at War Room Gym and a lot of other great coaches across the nation, it's always us. It's always us. So, and I kind of leave it at that. And, you brought up the thing with Edmond and you got to imagine how tough that is for Ronda when so many people tell Ronda she should, leave this person, not going to deal whatever, and she needs to go to a real camp, not going to deal whatever. That's not an easy bond to break, like that's just not as easy as just saying you're losing with that person, get out, it's just different. Man, did they win. They won better than anybody in the history of women's fighting. And in a lot of cases, they won better than anybody in the history of fighting, like to have that many quick stoppages right at the time as Instagram's getting hot. And it used to be 15-second clips that you could have an Instagram and your whole fight fits in the clip. And it happens 3 fights in a row where your whole fight, fits in the clip. Like that kind of stuff is huge for, her and her confidence, even though it didn't look great. Like I hated the fight with, Beth Kohara. I hated that fight, but like ideally, even though she won it, ideally I understand the bond between coach and athlete, and it's not as easy as just saying leave a person. So anybody out there, you're thinking about going into coaching, I'd be telling Schwan to go into coaching all the time. I jump on him about it all the time.
See, I didn't make it up, guys. Yeah. I didn't make it up. Nobody believes me when I say this. You heard it from the man himself.
Yes. So it's always us, that's just kind of how this game's got to be, that's why football teams, you hear who's got it better than us. Like you hear those kind of sayings they didn't come from nowhere. It really is. There's a reason why Stipe runs and hugs his coaches the first thing he does right after he wins the world title in Brazil. It's the bond is different, it's just different. Everybody in that corner wants you to succeed. And if you don't succeed, they're in there, same as Aldo's corner. How many times you didn't see one coach yelling at Aldo after he lost to Conor? They were on the ground crying with him because they knew if he lost, they at least wanted him to perform. And it didn't happen that way. Didn't go that way for them. So that's how it's got to be in this game all the time. It can't be your athlete's fault. That's just, I'll stand by that forever. Even if you tell your athlete exactly what to do and it doesn't go their way, it's still, we lost as a team. It's no matter what.
Well, you know what, that's the perfect note to end on. And I hope any fighters who may listen or fans or potential coaches hear that, because that's a message that needs to go out. These guys need to be supported. You can talk all the ins and outs the next day, the weeks to come, but you need to show that support. And that's something the teachers and parents and anybody else in any position of authority need to remember. It's us. We're going to work better. We're going to be better. We're going to improve. That's how me and Raphael do the show. We go at each other. We work together. We're just trying to put the best product out for people. And that's what I think should apply in all phases of life.
For sure. And I want to apologize to Raphael. I'm sorry I'm long-winded. I got to talk. And you get to talk about combat sports. I'll talk forever. And I know you probably wanted to get back in, Raphael. My apologies.
No, man, you're definitely good at all. This is kind of how we run our interviews. I'm more of this. I talk about the show. This is
Raphael's like, Schwan, he text me, Schwan, you need to shut up, dude. The show's almost over.
It's all good, man. We definitely appreciate having you here.
Yeah, thank you very much. You're our second guest. We had Marcus Davis on. He was talking about his coaching career, and he set a very high bar. You're right there with them. Thank you for the technical and the background on the coaching corners. Maybe I'll be a little bit nicer to these guys after the fight instead of just tearing them down like I usually do. But I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the energy you brought, and I appreciate the message you ended this conversation with. Thank you very much, and for the inspiration and for the support, man. And I really appreciate it on a personal level. Thank you very much.
No problem. And thank you to all the listeners and all the people who follow your podcast and people who get combat sports out there. I'm just a Christian guy who was looking to talking to a guy about Christ. Turns out he was a fighter, and then it got started from there. I started training as a coach like almost 10 years ago now, and it just success built upon itself, and I just was fortunate to get to work with a lot of great athletes in my career. So I'm a person who wants to spread what happened to me. So definitely you guys got to get on Schwan about getting into coaching, because we need more guys like him in the game who put the time in and so on. And it's a hard truck. It's not necessarily the most glamorous thing, but go out there, place yourself out there, dare to be great. Coaches have got to dare to be great, just like fighters do. So everybody get on Schwan, make him coach.
All right, thanks, Steve. Gonna have my mentions filled up with people saying, "Why aren't you listening to this man?" So thank you very much, Steve.
No problem. Nice to meet both of you guys officially.
Appreciate it,
All
man.
right,
Definitely thank you for having you here.
For sure. God bless. Have a good night.
Have a good night. So, Schwan, that was a great conversation there, man. I was definitely learned a lot of what it's like to see it from his side. I think I definitely appreciate everything he had to say there.
I admit, the one thing, it's like when Johnny Hendricks went on that losing streak, you could see when Johnny was losing and he was hurt, you could see Steven right there. And I think the way he ended this conversation was just perfect. It's about us. Even if you don't do what we're supposed to do, or I mess something up, we win together, we lose together. And I really believe that everybody should apply that in their life. Like if people did that with the people they know and their family and in every aspect of life, I think the world would be a better place. So I think that's a lesson they can apply to anybody. But he gave us some really good insight on, what is a person who's been on that big stage routinely and had a guy go through huge winning streaks and minor losing streaks. He's seen both ends of it. So, he was very empathetic to other coaches, even ones he didn't agree with. He was very empathetic to their experience, what their fighter went through and what they were going through. And that was really impressive. I mean, that's a really good guy out there. That's a really good guy.
Yeah, definitely there. So let's continue our talk about some of the topics this week. So I also want to get back to UFC 209. What else kind of stands out from this show for you? I've looked at the card, and there's a couple of points. I wrote about Rashad Evans earlier in this week, and I think that we may be looking at a real test for Rashad Evans. Not being that Daniel Kelly is a massively hard fight for him, but we don't know what is next for Evans. He definitely he's at the later stages of his career, but is this something that kind of that we should expect to see the end of it, or what should we expect from Evans on Saturday?
I actually wrote an article about this, breaking down the finer points of the fight, and the thing about it is, this fight should be a showcase. If he can make the weight, it should be a showcase for him, because even in the fact that he's only lost to a certain caliber of guy, and he really hasn't been stopped except for Vince Teixeira. He's been able to hang in. He's had his moments, and the guys he's lost to are much better than anybody Daniel Kelly's even beaten. Kelly's got a win streak, but he's been beating up on third and fourth tier guys. The thing is, we really don't know what state Evans is in. I mean, he had to cancel fights for medical reasons. He's been injured, and he just hasn't seemed to have the fire in previous incarnations of his time in the UFC. That's where my concern is. He's got the speed of it. Even if Evans is slowed down, he's not as quick, he's not as mobile as he used to be. His technique has never been super crisp. A lot of his striking is attribute based on him being able to get in and get out and react faster than you and time you. But if he doesn't really have the fire for it, Kelly's the wrong guy to face. In theory, he should just blow through him. He's the better athlete. He's better in every single area. But Kelly's a really gritty fighter. He's been in bad positions in every single fight he's been in, and he's had to battle his way back and slowly chip away from guys and slowly walk them down and eventually beat them down. You watch all his fights. He's been against better athletes, younger guys who hit harder, who've had all the advantages Rashad's going to have over him, and he's found some way to win. Now, they weren't the class of Rashad Evans, but they had similar advantages and similar approaches, way to tough it out, to grind them out, and then finish them or win decisions. And that's a certain aspect you can't ever overlook, that mental aspect. His game isn't really complex. He's not a really great kicker. He's not even a very good striker, to be quite honest. He has a grit and a savviness that comes from competing in combat sports for his entire life. He was a 3-time Olympian, so he knows about pressure. He knows about competing on that night. Rashad hasn't seemed to be on in the nights he's needed to be on in a long time. Every time he lost a fight, he's like, camp went well, I was feeling good, and I got in there and I couldn't pull the trigger. I couldn't perform. And if he can't perform against Daniel Kelly, I don't know that he has a career left. Daniel Kelly's not the kind of guy he should lose to. I mean, he shouldn't really even be pushed by him. But if he loses to him, he's really got to consider retiring. He's never lost this caliber guy, or tier caliber guy. And if he fights Kelly and loses, it's essentially over for him. If Kelly loses, we just find out that he's not a legitimate contender. But he's a 40-year-old guy with a lot of injuries, who's not in the best, who's not really built for the long-term career in MMA. He's got maybe 2, maybe 3 years at the most.
Yeah.
But Evan loses to this guy, I'm gonna have to talk retirement, because this is the kind of guy he never lost to before, and he never should lose to.
Definitely. I think it's a very staunch test for him. It's something else I actually wrote about for the site this week too, because I'm really concerned. If he feels that he's not able to get it done, and as you mentioned, not able to be able to pull the trigger, I think it is about time for him to walk away from the sport. He still has enough to offer as a coach. I think he was someone that could fit in as a great coach or as a commentator. He can still contribute, but I just don't think in the cage anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you saw what happened to Tim Kennedy. You get old overnight. You never know when it's going to hit. One time Tim Kennedy went life and death, but Romero pushed him. Next time, he's getting beat up by a blown-up welterweight. And not just beat, outclassed, outworked, out-hustled. Didn't look like he belonged in the same cage as Gastelum. And that could happen to Evans, even though he's facing an older and more shop-worn guy. If he's not on, he could get finished.
Definitely.
And that's just fine.
And then the other guy that's standing out that I'm looking forward to seeing is Lando Venata. I picked him as my UFC Rookie of the Year last year, and he's just someone that I am looking forward to watching come Saturday. I think he's something special, and I think we're going to see the next phase in that. Yeah, he lost his first fight in the octagon, but he took it on 2 weeks' notice. This is his full camp here, and he has a very strong team behind him. I'm just looking forward to seeing what he brings to the cage on Saturday.
Yeah, I like his style. I like his coach. Gibson is a great coach, a great strategic and technical mind. You've seen the improvements he's added to John Dodson and Donald Cerrone. And Venata is a guy he's actually built from the ground up. So this is his own personal product with his own spin. Like I said before, I think Venata is a good talent. I think he's got athletic ability. I think he's got a unique style. My question is, because of his unique style and some of the highlight reel aspects of it and how he did against Ferguson, I'm afraid that they throw him in deep too fast. And I know he's a good fighter. I know he's got some experience, but he hasn't had that much experience against a certain caliber of opponent. And I don't want to see a guy have to, get ruined or get put in a really bad fight matchup wise, because they're trying to focus on his appeal. There's still a process you have when you're developing fighters. I don't care how gifted they are, how talented they are. There's still a process. And anytime people get away from that process, more times than not, it blows up in their face. There have been prospects who've been ruined before. They got in a fight, they got put in the UFC too quickly, or they got put against certain guys in the UFC too quickly. There is a process.
My number one example of that will kind of always be Eric Silva. He could have been something very special, very highlight reel fighter. He was just something awesome. And they threw him in there with John Fitch, and I think they definitely, because I think that they were more or less trying to get rid of Fitch rather than pushing Silva, but that didn't work out in their favor. He's never been the same since.
Yeah, or in the girls' side, there was a fighter from the Ultimate Fighter, Jessamine Duke. She needed time to refine and build herself up. Instead, they threw her in the UFC, and she got all the fight beat out of her. Now she can't even compete at the Invicta level. Had they brought her up slower, you never know what could happen. It's always better to show herself and let them acclimate. And he's such a dynamic guy. He put on such a show. People were like, put him in with Khabib next. You still need to treat that as a legitimate fight, even though it's short notice. Bring him up, have the level of opponent move up little by little, and let him work himself into form. And I'm just afraid that, especially with the way the guys who run the UFC now are doing, he might just get thrown to the wolves because they want a sexy fight. They want something that'll draw some attention instead of developing a fighter, which is long term for the organization.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. Who else stands out? And there's also that Mark Hunt Alistair Overeem fight. That's a hell of a fight there too as well, especially if we get back one of these bad post-fight test results. But even still, in the octagon, what do you expect from this bout?
I don't expect it to be the shootout. If people think it's going to be. Overeem's more of a stick and move guy. His chin's deteriorated a little bit more. I mean, the guys he's been knocked out by aren't big punchers. They're not Mark Hunt kind of puncher. And Mark Hunt, as durable as he is, his chin is deteriorated a little bit, so he can't take the punishment that he used to. So I expect there to be big bursts of violence, but I expect it to be much more strategic kind of fight. Hunt's going to try to navigate the range and the distance and establish his jab, cut the cage off, work Overeem's body and kind of chop him down with a big shot. Overeem's going to try to pivot, work angles, tie Hunt up on the inside, land quick knees, land something big and land something quick, and hopefully catch him and put him away. It's not going to be an all-out brawl because neither one of those guys' chins can hold up to the other guy's power. Overeem, because his chin's routinely shaky, and Hunt, because he's taken a lot of KOs in the past couple years in the UFC. His chin can still take a lot, but he can't take it like it used to. So he's got to be a little bit more careful and defend responsibly. So I expect it to be kind of a strategical battle. I'd like to say Hunt's going to win, but I really think Overeem's going to somehow pull it up. I think he's going to mix up his shots. I think he's going to tie him up, go for takedowns, and just try to point fight his way in case unless he lands something big, in which case then he'll try to finish. But he's still got more tools. He's a better wrestler, better grappler, and probably the better technical striker and the better defensive striker. It's going to come down to Hunt force those exchanges where he can land those big shots. And I've seen Hunt get outclassed by lesser athletes and Overeem and outpositioned.
Do you think he tries to submit him?
I don't know that certain submissions from the top he might work an arm triangle. I can see him do a rear naked or maybe a Kimura. I can't see him going from anything that might have him losing position because you don't want Mark Hunt on top of you. You don't want him on top of you throwing anything at all. So I don't think he'll take any risks. And it's gonna be one of those submissions. But I don't think he's gonna do anything like an armbar, try a triangle or anything like that. It's too much of a risk with Mark Hunt's kind of power and his base, and how he is from top control. You don't want to give him anything. So if he takes him down, he's gonna try Kimura, maybe turn him over, get his back, something of that nature. I can't see him doing anything working off his back for a submission or for control at all.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you on that one there. Who else stands out? Are there any undercard fighters that you're looking forward to seeing, or someone who may not be getting the same type of pub throughout the week?
I really can't say there is because there's just I hate to say this, but there's so much. If you think about the 4 main card fights, there's just so much going on, not just in the actual fight, but the other stuff outside the cage. With Mark Hunt, he hates the cheaters. It's his legal suit against the UFC with Tyron Woodley. It's the way UFC treats him. It's his beef with Dana White. It's prejudice. With Ferguson and Khabib, it's a matter of these win streaks and who's going to get the next money fight with Conor McGregor. It's not just a matter of who's going to win the title or who's going to win this fight. There's so many things working inside and outside the cage, and I don't know that any of the undercard fights provide that sort of balance to both fighters. I mean, even Daniel Kelly and Rashad Evans, whoever loses this fight, depending on how they lose, they might be one step closer to retirement. I mean, Kelly's 40-something, lifelong combat sport guy. How many years does he have to go? What if he gets knocked out brutally? Rashad Evans, he's been in the game for a long time. He's been a former champion, tough winner, but he lost his edge. If he loses to a guy like Kelly, you have to consider retirement. So there's so many storylines that I don't know that anybody on that lower card has anything that generates that kind of balance and that kind of interest. It's easy to be overshadowed. It's just easy to be overshadowed because it's these 4 high, big personalities with all of these unique angles to their fight in and out of the cage.
Yeah, you're definitely very true about that. Some good breakdown there. When I was setting up this show for today, I kind of had completely forgot that Bellator has an event on Friday as well. They're putting together a showcase with Marlos Conan and Julia Budd sitting at the very top. So yeah, let's talk about that fight because I'm always interested when Marlos steps into the cage. I think she's someone who was great for women's MMA, but she'll never get the praise that she deserves for what she's done throughout her career. So talk to me about that fight. Julia Budd too. Remember, she has a win over Miesha Tate from way back in the day. So how would you break down this fight?
You know what's actually funny about this fight? This is the one time Bellator can actually say their division is better than the UFC.
Yep. Very true.
I mean, it's not even close. I mean, I like Holmes a good person. She's had great moments as a fighter. I can't say she's a great fighter. I just can't say it. Unfortunately for her, my new streak has started. I had the Misha Tate streak, and unfortunately for Holly Holm, I've had the Holly Holm streak for the past 2 years. So it's not getting any better for her. But Marlis Kunin and Julia Budd are actually experienced, legitimate featherweights, and they're experienced mixed martial artists. They had striking backgrounds, but they developed a full balanced game. We talked about this earlier when they first announced the fight. Both girls can grapple. Obviously, Kunin is a superior grappler, but Budd can grapple. Both can kickbox. Both are defensively responsible. Both can wrestle to a certain degree, and both have experience against a high level of opposition at a lower weight class and at this weight class. So in every way possible, if you compare the two featherweight matchups, this featherweight matchup is actually the better one, and it's not even close as far as accomplishment, consistency, quality of opposition, and skill set. Because Holly Holm hasn't really fought really great competition in her MMA career. The majority of her wins are against I'm not even second tier, third tier girls, and then a couple second tier girls. And then when she fought the first tier, she lost again. She's lost in a very decisive manner. And Jermaine Randami, she'd only fought one ranked fighter in the UFC prior to fighting Holm, and that was Nunes, and Nunes stomped her. And Holm was ranked, but Holm was ranked at 35, and Holm was coming off a 2-fight losing streak. So it's like the total opposite of the UFC cards. You have two girls who belong in the division, who compete in the division, and are coming in with full skill sets, compared to the UFC, where you have two strikers who are so-so grapplers, so-so wrestlers, with so-so level of opposition and so-so level of experience. It's like the complete opposite. And Bellator's featherweight division is just, even with two people, still more legitimate than the UFC's. In fact, they have more than two people in their featherweight division. So not only do they have better fighters, they have more fighters in the featherweight division.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a better matchup altogether. I would like to see Kunin win. I don't know that her punch resistance, she looks a little shaky to me. And one thing, Kunin, as good as she's been, she's not particularly physically strong. You can manhandle her. There's been lesser skilled girls who have dominated her and dictated rounds to her and beat her in rounds just off physical strength and aggression. Liz Carmouche was in like her fourth or fifth fight, something of that nature, and Liz Carmouche was up almost 3-0 just by taking her down and mauling her. Kunin had no ability to get her off. She had the technique, but she didn't have any horsepower. Kunin's been manhandled by her. Kunin got manhandled by Misha Tate after coming out to a fast start.
Mm-hmm.
Not a very physical fighter. I could see Bud getting a hold of her, reversing position, taking her down, and really laying the lumber on her, because I don't think that Kunin takes a shot as well as she used to. I don't think she recovers from a shot as well as she used to. And I think, as I remember, Bud's a physical, active fighter. As far as the skills, Kunin's the far superior skilled fighter. He's got the better experience. So I'm going to go with experience, because I think experience counts. But I see a very viable avenue to victory in Julia Budd if she just comes out and is aggressive and it's physical. She makes it a physical, mauling type fight. Kunin, I don't think, will hold up. I think Kunin will get broken down and finished. But if Kunin can maintain the range and control the engagement, she'll outclass her on the feet or on the ground. She just got to be smart about it. She's most likely going to grapple. Kunin knows her punch resistance isn't there, and if you watch her last couple of fights, she doesn't engage on the feet very much. She uses her hands just to get that body lock or that takedown. She's not engaging in strikes a whole lot unless she has to.
So, in essence, to make sure we stay on time here for this show, let's look at some of the other news bites that were coming on from the week. For sure, let's talk about the return of GSP and his pending fight against Michael Bisping. What was your first reaction when you heard about this fight?
My first reaction was, it's going to be really hard for me to make an argument that Tyron Woodley isn't right, because Bisping has done less than nothing, and now he's getting the biggest money fight there is outside of Conor McGregor. A 43-year-old man who wasn't even ranked in his division. I mean, I just started thinking, man, everybody who believes in Tyron Woodley is going to be pitching a fit and send fire to the town, because the UFC has set themselves up to be thoroughly and roundly criticized for this matchmaking.
Yeah, and what's interesting, it's crazy, because if Tyron Woodley wins and calls out somebody else that isn't what the people want, just going to go right back to people booing him and people and cussing and screaming about him again. So he can't win here. And I look at this fight with Bisping and GSP, and I'm like, my reaction was kind of like, like I was honestly serious. I would have loved to see them try to pit that GSP um, and GSP Conor McGregor fight. I think that would have been funny. It would have been hilarious to me. But yeah, I this fight right here, it just doesn't do it for me. I get why they're doing it. They're trying to make as much money as possible with every event, but I'm not convinced that this is going to be a
See,
huge payday.
I think they dropped the ball a little bit because Bisping's not a huge draw. I talked about this with a fellow podcaster and friend of the show, Patrick Wyman. If they wanted to maximize the money, what I think they should have done is have Bisping rematch Anderson Silva, because Anderson is coming off a disputed but a huge win over a ranked guy, a young ranked guy. He beat him, so you could have Bisping and Anderson fight on a separate headline, a separate card, and then you can have GSP against whoever, because GSP draws regardless of who he's fighting. So you could have had two big headline cards that made money. Instead, they're trying to squeeze it all into one to have Bisping fight GSP, thinking it's going to sell, but Bisping's not a huge draw. I mean, he creates some interest with his trash talk, but he's not a guy that people routinely put down their money to see. He never has been that guy. So I don't know I don't know what they're trying to do, except maybe put George in a position to win, because Bisping's the most vulnerable champion. He's the guy who's looked the worst against even decent competition. So I'm guessing GSP sees something, and maybe he thinks he can get that third title and not have to be put in danger. But I mean, as far as like it making big money, it's not that kind of fight. I mean, it should make it's like Conor McGregor makes money against anybody. Floyd Mayweather makes money against anybody. The only time they make huge amounts of money is when they fight superstars. Michael Bisping is not a superstar, and I've said that for years. Everybody's like, "Oh, Michael Bisping deserves it." He's not a superstar. He's not a superstar in his own country. Much like Tyron Woodley, he has not got his own people on his side, which is part of the reason he is not a superstar. That's why he's got to look for big fights. When you have your own people on your side, you are the big fight. When you have to look for an A side, that means you're not a star, and you're trying to get somebody to generate interest so you can make money. And that's the only reason Bisping's doing it. He wants to make money, and George St. Pierre is fighting him because Bisping is the most vulnerable champion in MMA. I mean, any weight division. He is the most vulnerable champion. Even worse than Jermaine Randami. He's the most vulnerable champion in MMA, and that's why GSP is going for it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be it's going to be a hell of a build up. It's going to be. I don't think.
Well, George is going to say that. He's going to say, "This is my most dangerous opponent. Yep. I have prepared." Well, he's going to say the same thing he always says. George, Bisping is going to have to do all the heavy lifting on this one.
And yeah, and I'm not what's the word? I'm not surprised by that at all. And what's interesting is that it's not that the UFC doesn't know how to make the it's not that they don't know how to make the correct fights, because earlier today, I think, or yesterday, they announced that we got Damian Maia and Jorge Masvidal. So that right there is a great fight for the welterweight division. It's supposed to be a 5-round fight. That's exactly what they're supposed to do. So how did they drop the ball on? You can't. I get what they're doing.
It's a great fight for the division. It's not a great fight for Damian Maia. How many fights has he won in a row? Like 7 or 8?
7 now, yeah.
Against ranked quality guys, and his reward is Jorge Masvidal. Nah, dude, that's not a reward. That's like we don't want you to get near our champion. To me, that sounds like they're trying to angle it away from him. Like they don't want him to have a title shot, so they're going to make him face the toughest matchup to make sure he doesn't get a title shot. He should have had a title shot by now.
Yeah,
I mean, right. His opponents, his level of opposition that he's beat in this run is better than the level of opposition Tyron Woodley's beat. It's better than almost anybody in welterweight, except for maybe Stephen Thompson. And he's not anywhere near a title shot. He's having to wait. And if Thompson wins, he's still not going to get a title shot. Personally, I don't think he's getting past Jorge. I think Jorge is going to beat him. But he shouldn't even have to do this. He should be able to sit out and wait for a title fight. But he can't afford to, and now he's going to have to be fight yet another top-ranked guy.
And a very dangerous fight. Very dangerous.
Yep, he's within arm's reach of a title shot, and he might as well be a mile away. It's kind of disturbing what they're trying to do. I mean, it's good for us because it's a good fight, but for the fighter, they're doing him a disservice. He should have got his title fight by now.
I totally agree with you on that. So with that in mind, we're gonna go ahead and close the show out. We just had a 2-hour show. We had a great conversation, great interview today, and we definitely looked at the the major events and major fights that are going down this weekend. So with that in mind, why don't you tell everybody what you're working on for this week?
I've actually had a couple pieces put out. I have a series called "It's About to Get Real," where I break down particular fights. I do a prologue, and then afterwards, I discuss the aftermath. I did that for Kelly versus Evans, and then I did a 2-part article that focuses on the two fights that Mark Hunt is fighting. One outside the cage with the UFC, and one inside the cage with Alistair Overeem. Kind of go into the history of the UFC, what set up his legal battle with them, history of Alistair Overeem since he's been in the UFC, and his path to victory, and Mark Hunt's past victories against him. So I hope that all y'all would check out those pieces and admire the analysis I put there, because as world-class coach Stephen Wright just said, I should be coaching because I'm just that good. I didn't say it. Raphael heard it. So did you.
Crazy, yeah. That's definitely some good news to hear there. But with that in mind, man, let's go ahead and close out the show. I appreciate having you on. Appreciate what you brought to the show. It's another good one, and I'm looking forward to whoever else we bring on and talk to in the
And once again, thank you for I know you, and once again, everybody who likes the show and watch the show and will love this interview, please comment to this man, tweet him, thank him, because this is his show. I just get to co-star on it. And he moved the time back way later than we usually are. He let me and Stephen Wright just ramble on, just like he let me and Marcus Davis talk too much, because he wants to give you all the best product and the most information and bring something different in the conversations and interviews we have. He wants to bring something new to y'all. So he's allowing me to kind of have some freedom on the show creatively. And I appreciate it. And y'all should share how much you appreciate that with him, because he didn't have to do it. He could have been like, this is the time we ain't doing it. But he moved it all the way back because he wanted to give this to the fans. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Raphael, for sacrificing, going out of your way to let me do the things I like to do on the show.
No problem, man. No problem at all. No problem at all. So thanks, everybody, for listening to the show. Be sure to like and share our content. And again, tune in to the MMA Ratings Podcast to catch us here. Definitely check out the show, MMAratings.net, and catch us on Instagram and Twitter under the same name. After that, thanks again, and have a great night, everybody.
Have a great night, guys.